Men, let's get straight to the point. Self-respect is non-negotiable in any relationship. There are behaviors from a woman that should never be tolerated or forgiven because allowing them undermines your value, authority, and emotional well-being. Many men make the mistake of excusing bad behavior in the name of love, comfort, or fear of losing her. But this destroys respect and attraction over time. This video will break down exactly what actions cross the line, why they are damaging, and how maintaining boundaries protects your self-respect. Understanding these behaviors isn't about controlling her. It's about holding yourself to a standard that ensures you are valued and respected in the relationship. A high-value man doesn't negotiate his dignity or tolerate repeated actions that erode trust, integrity, and emotional balance. We'll explore 7 critical behaviors that every man must recognize as deal breakers. From dishonesty and manipulation to disrespect and betrayal, these are not minor mistakes. They are threats to your emotional health and the dynamic of the relationship. By identifying these patterns and refusing to forgive them blindly, you maintain authority, ensure mutual respect, and set the tone for how you are treated. By the end of this video, you'll understand why certain actions are unforgivable, how to recognize them early, and the strategies for maintaining boundaries without losing composure or attraction. This knowledge empowers you to protect your self-respect, strengthen your presence as a high-value man, and cultivate relationships where respect and integrity are never compromised. 1. Dishonesty. Men, dishonesty is one of the biggest deal breakers in a relationship. A woman who lies, whether about small things or big ones, is sending a clear message. She doesn't respect you enough to be truthful. Lies erode trust, and without trust, there is no foundation for attraction, connection, or long-term loyalty. High-value men recognize that tolerating dishonesty is not a minor flaw. It's a direct threat to your self-respect and emotional security. Dishonesty comes in many forms. It can be blatant, like hiding major details about her life, relationships, or actions. It can also be subtle, omitting information, bending the truth, or misleading you to get her way. Even small lies accumulate over time, creating confusion, doubt, and emotional stress. Men who excuse these lies often find themselves questioning reality, doubting their judgment, and losing confidence in the relationship. The psychological impact of dishonesty is significant. When a woman lies, she is testing your tolerance and gauging how much you will accept without consequence. If you ignore it or forgive it too easily, you teach her that your boundaries are flexible and your self-respect negotiable. This erodes attraction because women are instinctively drawn to men who demonstrate consistency, integrity, and unwavering standards. How to handle dishonesty. A high-value man addresses it directly and establishes consequences. This doesn't mean overreacting or creating unnecessary drama. It means clearly communicating that lying is unacceptable and that repeated dishonesty will damage trust irreparably. Maintaining calm, measured authority while refusing to tolerate lies reinforces your value and self-respect. Men who understand this principle also recognize that dishonesty is rarely a one-time issue. It's a pattern that escalates if unchecked. Forgiving lies too easily sends a signal that boundaries can be crossed, leading to manipulation and disrespect in other areas of the relationship. By refusing to forgive dishonesty, you maintain control, preserve attraction, and protect the emotional integrity that forms the foundation of high-value relationships. Ultimately, dishonesty is unforgivable because it attacks trust, stability, and self-respect. Men who uphold their standards, call out deception, and maintain boundaries, command respect, attract genuine investment, and ensure that relationships are built on transparency and integrity rather than compromise and tolerance of damaging behavior. 2. Manipulation. Men, Manipulation is a behavior you should never forgive in a relationship. When a woman manipulates, she is attempting to control your emotions, decisions, or actions for her own benefit, often at the expense of your self-respect. Manipulation comes in subtle forms: guilt-tripping, passive-aggressive comments, emotional blackmail, or in overt actions, like pressuring you to act against your values. Recognizing it is critical, because tolerating manipulation undermines your authority and erodes attraction. Manipulation is often disguised as concern, affection, or problem-solving. She might say things like, "If you really cared, you would," or use your emotions to create compliance. She may exaggerate situations to make you feel guilty, insecure, or responsible for her happiness. Over time, these tactics create a pattern where you feel obligated to act in ways that compromise your boundaries, priorities, or self-respect. The psychological impact of manipulation is profound. Men who forgive or ignore it gradually lose confidence, become reactive, and start questioning their decisions. Manipulation creates imbalance, giving her control over your behavior and diminishing your value in the relationship. Women are instinctively attracted to men who maintain independence and composure. If you allow manipulation, you signal that your emotions are negotiable, which reduces attraction and respect. How to handle manipulation? The first step is awareness. Recognize when she is using guilt, emotional pressure, or subtle coercion to influence your choices. Respond with calm assertiveness. Set clear boundaries and communicate expectations firmly, without overreacting. For example, if she tries to guilt you into doing something against your principles, calmly explain your position and stand by it. Your consistency signals that you value yourself and won't be controlled. Men who refuse to forgive manipulation maintain authority and emotional stability. They create a dynamic where respect and transparency are required for meaningful interaction. Tolerating manipulation, even once, sets a dangerous precedent. It teaches her that emotional leverage works and encourages repetition. By drawing the line, you reinforce your high-value status, increase attraction, and ensure the relationship operates on mutual respect rather than coercion. Ultimately, manipulation is unforgivable because it attacks your autonomy and self-respect. High-value men recognize that maintaining boundaries and refusing to be controlled is essential for attraction, emotional integrity, and long-term relational health. By standing firm against manipulation, you protect your dignity, command respect, and ensure that the relationship evolves on terms that honor your value, principles, and self-worth. 3. Disrespect men. Disrespect is one of the clearest lines you should never allow to be crossed in a relationship. Disrespect can take many forms: verbal insults, mocking your opinions, ignoring boundaries, or undermining your decisions. When a woman disrespects you, she is signaling that she doesn't value your presence, your authority, or your self-respect. Tolerating disrespect damages attraction and erodes the foundation of the relationship. Disrespect is often subtle at first. It may show up as sarcasm, dismissive comments, or questioning your choices in front of others. It might involve disregarding your time, priorities, or feelings. While these behaviors can seem minor individually, repeated disrespect accumulates, leaving you frustrated, undervalued, and emotionally depleted. Men who excuse disrespect risk teaching her that your dignity can be compromised, which lowers your perceived value and makes it harder to maintain authority in the relationship. Psychologically, women are instinctively drawn to men who demonstrate confidence, boundaries, and self-respect. When you allow disrespect, you signal vulnerability and reduce attraction. High-value men maintain composure, assert boundaries, and communicate clearly when disrespect occurs. This sets a standard. Respect is required for meaningful connection and continued emotional investment. How to handle disrespect? First, recognize it immediately and don't minimize its impact. Address it calmly and directly, without anger or defensiveness. For instance, if she interrupts, mocks, or dismisses you, a simple statement like, "I expect to be spoken to respectfully," communicates your boundaries clearly. Consistency is key. If you enforce respect every time it is violated, she learns that your self-respect is non-negotiable. Disrespect is unforgivable because it erodes trust, attraction, and emotional stability. Men who tolerate it repeatedly compromise their position and authority in the relationship. By refusing to forgive disrespect, you reinforce your value, command attention, and maintain emotional dominance. This doesn't mean creating conflict unnecessarily. It means protecting your dignity and setting a standard that ensures mutual respect. Ultimately, disrespect undermines the foundation of any relationship. High-value men recognize that allowing even small acts of disrespect invites larger issues over time. Standing firm, communicating boundaries, and refusing to tolerate disrespect preserves attraction, strengthens self-respect, and ensures that the relationship is based on mutual regard, integrity, and honor. Respect is earned and demanded, never freely given when it compromises your value. 4. Betrayal. Men, betrayal is one of the most unforgivable behaviors in any relationship. Whether it's cheating, breaking promises, or sharing your private information without consent, betrayal strikes at the core of trust and emotional security. Once trust is broken in a meaningful way, the foundation of the relationship is compromised, and forgiving it can signal weakness and lower your value in her eyes. Betrayal doesn't always have to be physical. It can be emotional or psychological. Lying about interactions with other men, keeping secrets, or undermining your authority in front of others are all forms of betrayal. These actions communicate that she prioritizes her own desires or ego over your mutual respect and commitment. Men who excuse betrayal, even once, risk creating a pattern where their boundaries and emotional security are repeatedly violated. The psychological impact of betrayal is severe. It triggers insecurity, doubt, and mistrust, not just toward her, but toward yourself. You start questioning your judgment and feel the pressure to justify her actions, which erodes confidence and emotional stability. Women instinctively respect men who uphold standards and refuse to tolerate violations of trust. Forgiving serious betrayal, especially without accountability, communicates that your self-respect is flexible, which diminishes attraction. How to handle betrayal. First, recognize it immediately and assess the magnitude. Minor mistakes or miscommunications are one thing, but true betrayal involves a deliberate violation of trust or loyalty. Respond firmly, calmly, and decisively. Confront the behavior, communicate the consequences, and make it clear that such actions are unacceptable. Avoid reactive anger. High-value men maintain composure while enforcing their boundaries. Betrayal is unforgivable because it damages the core elements of respect, trust, and attraction. Allowing it to slide signals tolerance for behaviors that compromise your dignity, making future violations more likely. By refusing to forgive betrayal, you preserve self-respect, maintain emotional authority, and set the standard for how you must be treated in all future interactions. Ultimately, betrayal destroys the emotional and psychological foundation of a relationship. Men who uphold boundaries against betrayal demonstrate strength, clarity, and high value. They protect their self-respect, reinforce attraction, and ensure that relationships operate on trust, integrity, and mutual regard, rather than compromise and repeated violations. Refusing to forgive betrayal is not cruelty. It's the essential act of protecting your worth. 5. Repeated disrespect of boundaries. Men, boundaries are the backbone of self-respect in any relationship. When a woman repeatedly disrespects your boundaries, it's a clear sign that she doesn't value your limits or your emotional space. This behavior is unforgivable because it signals a lack of respect for your autonomy, priorities, and personal standards. High-value men understand that tolerating repeated boundary violations erodes their authority, confidence, and attraction in the relationship. Boundaries can be physical, emotional, or psychological. Physical boundaries involve personal space or intimacy. Emotional boundaries relate to your feelings, opinions, or time. Psychological boundaries deal with your decision-making, priorities, and autonomy. When these limits are crossed repeatedly, after you've communicated them clearly, it's no longer a misunderstanding or an accident. It becomes a pattern of disrespect that undermines your self-worth and reduces your influence. Repeated boundary violations often appear subtly. She may pressure you into doing things you don't want to do, ignore requests for space, or dismiss your emotional needs. Over time, these behaviors teach her that your limits are negotiable, which diminishes attraction and increases frustration. Men who forgive repeated violations send the message that their independence and self-respect are flexible, lowering perceived value. How to handle this? First, identify the pattern. Consistent disregard for your boundaries is a red flag. Then, respond assertively without overreacting. Clearly communicate what is unacceptable and outline consequences if the behavior continues. For instance, if she constantly pressures you for time or attention you've designated for yourself, calmly assert, "I need my space, and I expect it to be respected." Enforcement is key. Boundaries have no value if they're not backed by action. Repeated disrespect of boundaries is unforgivable because it threatens your independence, emotional stability, and self-respect. Men who maintain firm boundaries reinforce their high-value status, maintain attraction, and cultivate relationships built on mutual respect. Allowing repeated violations signals weakness, reduces authority, and makes emotional manipulation or entitlement more likely. Ultimately, repeated boundary violations are a test of your self-respect. High-value men refuse to compromise on their limits, ensuring that attention, intimacy, and emotional energy are given under conditions of respect and integrity. By standing firm, you protect your dignity, command authority, and establish a relationship dynamic where mutual respect is non-negotiable. Ignoring these violations is costly. Enforcing boundaries is essential for preserving attraction, influence, and long-term emotional health. 6. Lack of accountability. Men, one of the most damaging behaviors a woman can display in a relationship is a lack of accountability. When she refuses to take responsibility for her actions, mistakes, or words, it undermines trust, respect, and emotional balance. Excusing poor behavior, blaming you for her choices, or denying responsibility are signs that she prioritizes her comfort over integrity. High-value men recognize that tolerating this behavior diminishes attraction and erodes their self-respect. Lack of accountability manifests in many ways. She may deflect blame during arguments, refuse to admit wrongdoing, or rationalize actions that hurt you. She might repeatedly repeat the same behaviors without acknowledgement, creating frustration and resentment. Emotional manipulation often accompanies this behavior, as she may attempt to shift guilt onto you, exaggerate your mistakes, or use your patience as leverage. Psychologically, accountability is tied to respect. Women are instinctively drawn to men who value themselves, enforce boundaries, and expect honesty and integrity. When you forgive a lack of accountability, you signal that your standards are negotiable. This reduces perceived value, encourages repeated offenses, and undermines the emotional foundation of the relationship. High-value men maintain authority by holding partners responsible for their actions while remaining calm and composed. How to handle this? The first step is clarity. Recognize when she refuses to accept responsibility and avoid rationalizing or excusing her behavior. Address it directly, calmly, and assertively. For example, you might say, I expect you to own your actions. Deflecting blame is unacceptable. If repeated patterns continue, establish consequences that reinforce your boundaries. Consistency is critical. Without it, accountability loses meaning and patterns of disrespect persist. Lack of accountability is unforgivable because it signals unwillingness to grow, respect boundaries, or maintain emotional integrity. Men who enforce accountability protect their self-respect, command respect in the relationship, and maintain high-value presence. Excusing this behavior weakens influence and erodes attraction, leaving the relationship vulnerable to repeated cycles of manipulation, frustration, and mistrust. Ultimately, holding a woman accountable is not about control or punishment. It's about maintaining standards, ensuring mutual respect, and protecting your self-respect. High-value men understand that relationships function best when both partners take responsibility for their actions, communicate honestly, and respect boundaries. Refusing to forgive a lack of accountability reinforces authority, strengthens attraction, and ensures the emotional integrity of the relationship remains intact. 7. Betraying your trust. Men, trust is the cornerstone of any meaningful relationship, and when a woman betrays it, it's one of the most unforgivable behaviors. Betrayal can take many forms: infidelity, sharing private information, breaking promises, or secretly undermining you. But the common thread is that it violates the foundation of confidence and emotional security you've built. Once trust is broken, forgiving it without accountability can erode attraction, respect, and your sense of self-worth. Betraying trust is different from small mistakes or misunderstandings. It's deliberate, conscious, and often calculated. A woman who betrays trust demonstrates that she prioritizes her own desires or agenda over the integrity of the relationship. Even when apologies follow, the emotional damage lingers because the certainty and security that form the basis of intimacy have been compromised. Men who forgive such actions risk signaling that their boundaries and self-respect are flexible, which reduces perceived value and increases the likelihood of repetition. Psychologically, trust is tied to attraction, respect, and emotional safety. Women are naturally drawn to men who maintain standards, enforce boundaries, and uphold integrity. Betrayal threatens all three. It creates doubt, insecurity, and emotional imbalance, leaving men vulnerable to manipulation or repeated disrespect. High-value men recognize this immediately and understand that tolerance of betrayal undermines their authority in the relationship. How to handle betrayal. First, acknowledge the magnitude of the violation without minimizing its impact. Address it calmly, directly, and firmly, setting clear consequences for such behavior. Protecting your self-respect and emotional integrity is critical. This doesn't mean overreacting. It means maintaining composure while making it clear that repeated breaches of trust are unacceptable. Betraying your trust is unforgivable because it destroys the relational framework necessary for attraction, intimacy, and mutual respect. Men who refuse to tolerate betrayal maintain authority, protect self-respect, and ensure that their relationships are built on honesty, loyalty, and integrity. Forgiving without accountability compromises these standards, inviting repeated breaches and weakening the connection over time. Ultimately, a high-value man understands that trust is non-negotiable. Betrayal is not just a mistake, it's a direct assault on your dignity, your emotional security, and the dynamic of the relationship. Refusing to forgive it is essential for preserving self-respect, reinforcing attraction, and maintaining authority. Trust, once broken, must be treated with the seriousness it deserves, ensuring that your standards, boundaries, and value remain intact. Men, your self-respect is the single most important factor in any relationship. There are behaviors from a woman that should never be forgiven because tolerating them undermines your value, authority, and emotional well-being. Dishonesty, manipulation, disrespect, betrayal, repeated boundary violations, lack of accountability, and betrayal of trust are not minor mistakes. They are direct attacks on your self-respect and the foundation of attraction. High-value men understand that forgiveness without boundaries or accountability diminishes authority and signals weakness. When you tolerate these behaviors, you reduce your influence, decrease attraction, and create patterns that encourage repetition. Relationships are built on trust, respect, and integrity, and compromising these elements for temporary comfort or fear of confrontation comes at a high cost. The key is awareness, assertiveness, and consistency. Recognize these behaviors early, address them calmly but firmly, and enforce consequences. This doesn't mean creating unnecessary conflict. It means protecting your dignity, maintaining emotional balance, and ensuring that your standards are non-negotiable. High-value men attract partners who respect their boundaries, honor their presence, and invest emotionally in alignment with integrity and mutual respect. Ultimately, refusing to forgive these behaviors isn't about punishment. It's about preserving self-respect, authority, and long-term emotional health. Men who uphold these standards command respect, maintain attraction, and cultivate relationships where boundaries, trust, and integrity are honored. Your value is not optional, and the behaviors you refuse to tolerate define the respect and quality of the connections you attract. Stand firm, protect yourself, and let self-respect guide every choice you make in love and life.